Ethan never imagined that a simple exploration trip would turn into the strangest day of his life. He had spent years studying alien technology and ancient ruins on distant planets, but nothing prepared him for the vast, glowing city that stretched across the horizon of Arendor.
9. The sky shimmered with colors humans did not have names for, and enormous towers, shaped like spiraling crystals, reached far above the clouds.
Every structure seemed alive, pulsing softly with light, and the ground beneath him hummed faintly, as if responding to his presence. He had landed in what he assumed was the outskirts of the city, a place untouched by alien traffic or governance. His mission was simple: survey the energy grids of the planet to see if they could be adapted for human colonies. But as soon as he stepped beyond the landing platform, he felt eyes on him. Ethan was not alone. He paused and glanced around. Tall, slender figures moved with perfect symmetry along the pathways. Their skin glowed faintly, and their heads were elongated, adorned with patterns that shifted as if alive. Their eyes, black as the void, followed him as he walked. Each movement he made seemed to echo through the air. He realized too late that he had entered an area that might not welcome visitors. Before he could turn back, a shimmering barrier appeared across the path, cutting him off. He stopped, hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace. The figure that emerged from the barrier was taller than any human, with limbs that seemed both delicate and impossibly strong. Its voice was calm, musical, and resonated in his chest rather than in the air. "You do not belong here," it said. I'm just exploring," Ethan stammered. "I mean no harm." "I'm here on behalf of human interests. Nothing more." The alien studied him for a long moment, tilting its head slightly. Then, without warning, it gestured, and the path forward opened. Ethan took a cautious step, and as he did, a soft laughter echoed around him, a sound that was entirely alien, yet oddly comforting. That was when he first saw her, the nurse. She was waiting at the center of a circular chamber, surrounded by light that bent around her in strange, fluid patterns. Her movements were graceful, almost hypnotic, and her eyes, if one could call them that, seemed to pierce into his mind. Ethan froze, unsure whether to bow, wave, or run. "You are the human," she said simply. Her voice was soft, but there was an undeniable authority behind it. "Yes," he said cautiously. "That's me." She smiled then, a small, deliberate smile that seemed to contain a world of meaning. "I have been expecting you," she said. Ethan blinked. "You... what?" "I have been expecting you," she repeated. "And you are now my spouse." The word struck him like a thunderclap.
"Wait, spouse, I didn't..." He remembered joking earlier when he had tried to lighten the tension during his approach. "Yes, baby," he had said in his usual offhand manner, trying to appear casual even though his heart was racing.
He had not intended them to mean anything. The nurse's smile widened. "It is customary among my people to take such words seriously. You have spoken, and thus you are recognized." "Recognized as what? A spouse to the queen," she said. For a moment, he thought he had misheard. "The queen?" he repeated, his voice cracking. "You mean the ruler of this planet?" She nodded. "You will meet her soon. Prepare yourself."
Ethan had no idea what to prepare for.
His mind raced, flipping through every sci-fi story he had ever read, every movie he had watched. None of them matched the reality before him. Yet, despite the strangeness, there was a magnetic pull. Something about the nurse's presence made him calm, even as his pulse raced. They walked together through corridors that shifted subtly as they moved, walls bending and folding like liquid crystal. Ethan's eyes could hardly process the architecture. Each twist in turn revealed new wonders: floating gardens, streams of luminescent water that moved against gravity, and intricate carvings that glowed faintly with an energy he couldn't identify. Finally, they arrived at a vast chamber that seemed to stretch into infinity. At its center, seated on a throne carved from what looked like living crystal, was the Queen. Her presence was overwhelming. She was taller than any human could be, and her form shimmered with an ethereal glow. Her eyes locked onto Ethan, and for a moment he felt as though every secret thought he had ever had was visible to her. "You have spoken words that bind you to me," the Queen said. Her voice was deep, resonant, and every syllable seemed to vibrate through the air. "Are you aware of what this means, human?" I was joking," he admitted. "I didn't think it would. I didn't—" The Queen's expression softened, just slightly. "Jokes do not diminish value here. What matters is action and intent. We shall see if your words were fortuitous or reckless." Ethan nodded, though he had no idea what she meant. His training as an engineer and explorer told him to remain calm and observant, but his heart pounded in a way he had never felt before. The nurse stepped forward. "He will learn our ways, and in time he will understand the weight of his words." Ethan's mind reeled. Learn their ways, the weight of his words? He was a human, thrown into an alien world, declared the spouse of a being who was far beyond anything he had ever imagined. How could he possibly adapt? Days passed, though time felt strange within the palace. Ethan was guided by the nurse, who taught him how to move, speak, and even think in ways the aliens valued. Every moment was a challenge. Their customs were intricate, layered with meanings he could not immediately grasp. A gesture that seemed casual could be an insult. A smile could signify submission or power. But Ethan discovered something extraordinary. While he struggled to meet their expectations, his mistakes often led to unexpected solutions. He fixed a malfunctioning energy conduit with a human improvisation that the aliens had never considered. A minor error in communication revealed a loophole in their security protocols, preventing a potential disaster. Slowly, he realized that his human way of thinking, messy, flexible, intuitive, was not a weakness. It was a strength. The nurse watched him with an expression that was impossible to read. Sometimes she would smile approvingly. Other times she would simply observe, as though waiting for him to stumble. Yet, despite her calm exterior, Ethan felt a bond forming. She trusted him, perhaps more than anyone else in the palace, and that trust became a lifeline in this alien world. One evening, as the twin moons of Arendor, 9 cast silver light across the palace grounds, Ethan found himself alone with the nurse in a quiet courtyard. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly, and the air was thick with the scent of alien flora.
"You are learning faster than expected," she said, her voice gentle.
"I'm trying," Ethan replied. "But I still don't understand. Why me? Why did my words matter?" The nurse looked at him, her eyes reflecting the moons. "Because humans are unpredictable. You act in ways we cannot foresee. You see possibilities we overlook, and sometimes—" "That is exactly what we need." Ethan stared at her, processing the meaning. Unpredictable. Valuable. Important. For the first time since his arrival, he felt a flicker of confidence. Perhaps being human, messy, flawed, and reckless was not a curse in this world. Perhaps it was his greatest asset. As they walked back to the palace, a distant alarm echoed through the city. Ethan's pulse quickened. Something was happening, something beyond his comprehension. But he knew, deep in his bones, that he would face it, not just as a visitor, but as a human who had been thrust into a role no one could have predicted. The nurse glanced at him and smiled again. "Tomorrow, you will meet the Queen more closely."
"Prepare yourself, human. Your journey is only beginning."
Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of the future pressing against him. He did not know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. the galaxy had underestimated humans. And perhaps, just perhaps, he was about to show them why. Ethan woke to the soft hum of the palace around him. The air felt alive, vibrating gently as if the building itself were breathing. Outside, the city stretched endlessly, towers spiraling into the sky, glowing faintly in the dawn light. He rubbed his eyes and tried to remember that he was, somehow, the spouse of the most powerful being on the planet. The thought made him grin and groan at the same time. The nurse appeared without warning, gliding into the room as silently as a shadow. "Time moves differently here," she said.
"You have duties to begin, human. Today, you meet the Queen more closely."
Duties? I didn't even know what my duties are yesterday. The nurse's expression didn't change.
"You will learn." He followed her through corridors that twisted and turned, leading him into the heart of the palace. Today, he noticed details he had missed before. Walls etched with flowing patterns that seemed to depict stories, floors that reflected light like water, and soft whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Every element of the palace was alive, and it responded subtly to human presence. At the entrance to a vast audience chamber, the nurse paused. "Remember your position." Words have power here, but so do gestures. Observe first, speak carefully later. Ethan nodded, though he felt anything but confident. He stepped into the chamber where the Queen awaited. She was magnificent, seated on her crystalline throne, her form shimmering in the ambient light, her gaze fixed on him, and for the first time Ethan felt truly small, like a single flame in an endless storm of stars. "Human," she said. Her voice filled the room, resonating through his chest. "Yesterday you arrived with words that bound you."
"Today, you will speak with purpose. Why should I trust you?"
He tried to think of something clever, but his mind went blank. Instead, he remembered the nurse's advice. Observe first. He studied the Queen, noticing the subtle ways she commanded the room, not with fear, but with attention. Her eyes shifted slightly when someone was lying or hiding information. Her posture changed with each new emotion. It was a pattern, almost like a code. Ethan began. "I may not understand your customs yet, but I know humans value honesty, courage, and action."
"I will prove myself, not with words alone, but with deeds." The Queen's expression didn't change, but a faint pulse of light ran along her throne.
That, the nurse later explained, was a sign of approval. A subtle acknowledgement that she found his response intriguing. Over the following days, Ethan's life became a whirlwind of lessons. The nurse taught him the language of gestures, the subtle etiquette of their society, and the hidden meanings behind words. Every mistake was a lesson, every success a small victory. Humans were impulsive and messy, she explained, but sometimes that very unpredictability was their greatest strength. Ethan began to understand why. On the third day, while inspecting the palace's energy grids, he noticed a minor anomaly. The flow of energy to one of the palace's defensive systems was fluctuating dangerously. Aliens who monitored the systems were focused on perfect calculations, unable to see the irregularity. Ethan, with his human intuition, spotted it immediately. He acted quickly, rerouting power manually to prevent an overload. The system stabilized, and a disaster was avoided. The alien engineers stared at him, baffled. The Queen arrived shortly after, observing the scene silently.
"You act without hesitation," she said. "You see possibilities we overlook."
"That is remarkable." Ethan felt a surge of pride, but also relief. Perhaps humans really did have something unique to offer. Even so, not all attention he received was positive. A faction of alien nobles whispered behind his back. They viewed him as an interloper, a joke, someone unworthy of proximity to the Queen. They challenged him at every turn, assigning impossible tasks and testing his knowledge of alien customs. Ethan rose to every challenge, often in unexpected ways. When asked to navigate a labyrinthine data network designed to confuse non-aliens, he relied not on logic alone but on creativity and intuition. He improvised solutions, bypassing obstacles in ways the aliens never anticipated. Each success earned murmurs of admiration, mixed with disbelief. The nurse observed quietly, occasionally stepping in with advice. "Do not underestimate their suspicion," she said. "But do not doubt yourself either. Your value lies not in imitation, but in your humanity." Her words resonated. Ethan realized that humans thrived because they were flexible, unpredictable, and clever. While aliens had perfected precision and logic, humans brought innovation and improvisation, qualities that could change outcomes in ways even the most advanced civilizations could not foresee. As the days passed, Ethan and the nurse grew closer. Their bond was one of trust, mutual respect, and subtle humor. She taught him how to read the Queen's moods, interpret alien symbols, and understand the silent language of the palace. He shared stories of Earth, of humans laughing in the face of danger, of improvising solutions where others would freeze. The nurse listened intently, occasionally smiling at his tales, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. One evening, while walking through a garden suspended high above the city, Ethan saw the Queen from a distance, speaking with her advisors. Something was happening, a shift in energy readings, subtle vibrations that even the nurse noticed. The Queen's attention seemed divided, her focus strained. "Something troubles her," Ethan said. The nurse nodded. "The palace senses an incoming challenge. We must prepare." Challenges were part of his life now, part of the reason he had been brought here. But this felt different. It was not just a test of skill. It was a test of adaptability, courage, and ingenuity. When the Queen finally approached him later that night, she spoke directly.
"A delegation from the neighboring systems approaches. They question our leadership and the validity of our decisions."
They see humans as insignificant. Yet you, human, have demonstrated value.
"Your presence alone challenges assumptions."
"So they're underestimating me?"
The Queen's smile was faint, but unmistakable. "Underestimating humans is a mistake. Many civilizations have erred in that belief."
We shall see if they learn it, too. Ethan felt a strange mixture of pride and anxiety.
He was still just a human, a creature far less advanced than these aliens in almost every way. Yet he had been placed at the center of their society, recognized not only as a partner to their ruler, but also as a contributor, someone whose unique perspective could influence outcomes.
Over the next few days, the tension in the palace grew.
The alien delegation arrived, their ships hovering silently above the city. They were imposing, larger and more technologically advanced than Ethan could have imagined. Their representatives were cold, calculating, and dismissive, treating humans like minor curiosities. During the first meeting, Ethan was expected to remain quiet, observing protocols. But when the delegation questioned the Queen's decisions, subtly mocking her reliance on human input, Ethan found himself speaking up. "I may be human," he said, keeping his voice steady, "but I've worked with your systems and our strategies have prevented failures you did not anticipate. I offer insight, not because I am superior, but because humans see differently." A murmur ran through the room. The delegation paused, unaccustomed to a human speaking with authority in such a setting. The Queen observed silently, her eyes reflecting both amusement and approval. Over the next hours, Ethan navigated negotiations with a combination of honesty, intuition, and humor. He diffused tensions, clarified misunderstandings, and proposed solutions that the aliens had not considered. Slowly, the delegation began to shift their attitude, respect replacing dismissiveness. The nurse watched from the side, her expression calm but satisfied. "You see," she said softly, "your value is not in being like them. It is in being human." Ethan nodded, feeling a warmth of understanding. He was no longer just an outsider, a joke spouse. He was a participant, a contributor, and perhaps even a bridge between species. By the end of the week, the delegation had left, not entirely convinced, but forced to acknowledge that humans had unique strengths. The palace celebrated in subtle ways, lights shimmering more brightly, energy patterns flowing smoothly, as if the city itself approved. Ethan sat with a nurse that evening, watching the twin moons reflect on the palace's crystalline surfaces. "I can't believe it," he said. "I'm still just me. And yet, somehow, I've made a difference." The nurse smiled, a faint curve that seemed to carry centuries of wisdom.
"You have done more than survive."
"You have shown that humans can thrive, even here. And that is why your words yesterday, joking as they were, carry meaning beyond what you imagined." Ethan laughed softly. "So, my offhand, yes, baby, actually mattered." She laughed with him, a sound like music. "It mattered, human, in ways you have yet to understand." And as he looked up at the alien city, the glowing towers, and the skies filled with colors he could not name, Ethan felt a new confidence. The universe was vast, strange, and unpredictable, and he was exactly the kind of unpredictable force it did not see coming. Ethan had begun to feel more at home in the palace, but nothing could prepare him for the chaos that was about to unfold. The twin moons of Erendor. 9 hung low in the sky, casting silver light across the city. When the alarm sounded, they were deep, resonant pulses that vibrated through the walls, shaking the crystal floors beneath his feet. The palace itself seemed to shiver, as if sensing the approaching danger. The nurse appeared at his side almost immediately. "A threat approaches," she said, her voice calm, but her eyes sharp.
"Not one of words or politics. This is physical."
Immediate. Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. He was no soldier, no trained fighter. He was a human, a visitor in a world far beyond his understanding. Yet, in that moment, he knew he could not run. The queen emerged from her throne room, radiating authority and control. Her presence seemed to stabilize the palace's energy flows, as if her very being was a shield. She addressed her court and the gathered advisors.
"The Varkesh fleet approaches," she announced. Her voice reverberated through the chamber.
They have underestimated our defenses and seek to take this world.
The Varkesh. Ethan had read about them in the alien history archives. A brutal, technologically advanced species known for conquering worlds with precision and force. Humans were considered primitive, a minor detail in the galactic balance, and yet, here he was, expected to act in a world that had no patience for hesitation. The nurse guided him to a control chamber, where holographic displays floated in midair. Ethan's eyes widened at the scale of the incoming fleet. Dozens of massive ships, each bristling with weapons, moved like predators through the atmosphere. The aliens had defensive arrays ready, but the protocols were rigid, fixed, and predictable. Any Varkesh captain could anticipate their moves within moments. "They rely on perfection," the nurse explained. "We rely on adaptation. This is where you, human, may make the difference." Ethan swallowed.
Adaptation, that's improvisation, right? Precisely. And humans are excellent at it, she said, though her tone carried a subtle warning.
"A mistake could mean destruction." He nodded, forcing his fear aside. He had survived worse challenges on Earth, though none quite like this. He began analyzing the defense systems, noticing patterns in the way energy was distributed. The aliens had focused on maximum output in predictable grids, but they had not considered variations in flow, sudden changes, or creative tactics. Ethan called out suggestions to the alien engineers, proposing routes and diversions that no one had considered. "If we redirect energy through these secondary conduits," he said, pointing to a holographic schematic, "we can create temporary shield bursts that confuse their targeting systems. They were trained to follow rules, not improvisation. But the nurse's subtle nod gave them courage to act. Energy redirected, shields flared unpredictably, and the first wave of Varkesh ships found themselves misaligned with their attacks. Explosions rocked the outskirts of the city, but the palace held firm. The queen observed quietly, her gaze never leaving Ethan. "You act in ways we cannot predict," she said softly. "You think differently than we do. That is rare." Hours passed in a tense blur. Ethan moved between stations, analyzing the fleet, suggesting diversions, and improvising strategies. He relied on instinct as much as calculation, a human trait that alien precision could not replicate. The nurse stayed close, translating subtle cues from the queen, warning him of potential risks and guiding him when necessary. Then, the Varkesh made a bold move. A massive cruiser broke through the outer shields and aimed directly at the palace. Panic rippled through the alien defenders. Protocols failed. No strategy accounted for this maneuver. Ethan's mind raced. He had seconds to act. He noticed a sequence of secondary conduits running beneath the palace, unused in normal operations. He shouted instructions to the engineers. "Now, divert all non-essential energy into these channels. Create a feedback pulse in the conduit grid." The pulse surged through the palace, creating a dazzling display of light and energy. The Varkesh cruiser, caught off guard by the unpredictable fluctuations, was destabilized mid-flight. Its weapons malfunctioned, and it was forced to retreat. A cheer erupted among the alien defenders. Ethan could barely process what had happened. He had just improvised a human solution that saved the palace from destruction. The nurse placed a hand on his shoulder.
"You are proving something important, human. Humans are unpredictable."
Humans adapt. And that,
"Can be decisive. Even so, the battle was far from over."
Waves of Varkesh ships pressed closer, testing defenses, probing weak points. Ethan worked tirelessly, coordinating improvised maneuvers, predicting enemy tactics, and using his human intuition to turn potential disasters into victories. At one point, he noticed a pattern in the Varkesh attacks. Each wave followed a predictable cycle, assuming the palace would act the same way every time. Ethan realized he could use this against them. He directed the engineers to feign a collapse in one sector, drawing enemy fire, while secretly preparing a counterstrike in another sector. The strategy worked flawlessly. The Varkesh fleet, expecting repetition, fell into the trap. Their forces were scattered, and the palace's defenses struck with precision, guided by Ethan's improvisation. By the end of the day, the Varkesh had been repelled, though not without cost. Sections of the city were damaged, and alien engineers worked tirelessly to repair the systems.
Ethan, exhausted but exhilarated, finally allowed himself to breathe. He had survived the battle, and, more importantly, contributed in a way no alien could have anticipated.
The Queen approached him once the immediate threat had passed. Her presence was calm, yet filled with gravity. "You have done what many of my people could not. You have protected this world with your human perspective."
You are more than I anticipated.
Ethan felt a mix of pride and disbelief. "I just did what I could," he said, though he realized that his actions were unlike anything the aliens could conceive. He was human, yes, but that had become his greatest advantage. The nurse smiled, her expression unreadable, but approving. "Your actions have changed how we see humans. You are no longer a joke or a curiosity. You are valuable in ways we cannot fully explain." For the first time, Ethan understood what HFY really meant. Humans, despite being physically weaker or technologically less advanced in some ways, thrived on creativity, adaptability, and courage. That unpredictability, that spark of improvisation, could turn the tide of even the most advanced galactic conflicts. That night, as he walked through the palace gardens, the twin moons reflecting off crystalline leaves, Ethan felt a profound sense of belonging. He was still far from Earth, still a human in an alien world. But he had earned respect, influence, and trust. He had become more than a visitor. He was a contributor, a protector, a human among aliens who had underestimated his species. The nurse joined him, her presence comforting yet commanding. "Tomorrow you will meet the Varkesh delegation for negotiation," she said. "They may return, seeking to understand how their tactics failed. You will be part of this."
Your insight will be invaluable. Ethan nodded, though he felt the weight of what was coming.
He had proven himself in battle, but diplomacy would be another test entirely. Still, he carried confidence now, born not of arrogance, but of experience, and the realization that his humanity, his flaws, intuition, and cleverness was exactly what this world needed. As the city settled into a cautious calm, Ethan allowed himself a small, private smile. Humans were underestimated everywhere in the galaxy. Yet he had just shown an entire civilization that a single human mind, unbound by rigid logic, could make a difference, where even the most advanced technology might fail. And that, he realized with a thrill, was just the beginning. The morning sun of Erendor. 9 cast long, shimmering shadows across the palace as Ethan stood beside the nurse in the observation chamber. Outside, the city hummed with life, repairing itself after the recent Varkesh attack. The air was filled with a quiet tension, a mixture of relief and anticipation. Today, the Varkesh delegation was arriving, not to attack, but to negotiate. Ethan took a deep breath. This would be his first encounter with them. As a representative of the palace, he had survived battle, improvised solutions, and earned the Queen's trust. But diplomacy was different. Words mattered as much as actions, and alien politics were layered with hidden meanings he had yet to fully understand. The nurse glanced at him, her expression calm but focused. "Remember, human, your value is your perspective. You do not need to act like us. Speak, suggest, and observe. Trust yourself." Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. For the first time, he realized that his human traits, curiosity, adaptability, and honesty, were not only accepted here, but prized. He straightened his shoulders and followed the nurse into the grand audience chamber. The chamber was vast, its walls alive with shifting light patterns. At the far end, the Queen sat on her throne, serene and commanding. Ethan felt the weight of her gaze, yet it was not intimidating. It was expectant. She believed in him. The doors opened, and the Varkesh delegation entered. Their ships had not been damaged, but their mood was cautious, even tense. Their leader, a towering figure with armor that seemed to shimmer with energy, stepped forward. His voice was cold, precise. "Queen of Erendor, nigh, we have returned. Your defenses are unusual. We seek understanding." Ethan noticed the subtle smirks and dismissive gestures from some of the delegates, as though a human standing here could not possibly matter. He clenched his fists, reminding himself of the recent battle. Humans had been underestimated before, and the universe had learned a costly lesson. The Queen began the formal greetings, her words measured and elegant. Ethan observed quietly, noting the delegation's reactions, their tiny shifts of expression, the micro-gestures that revealed doubt, curiosity, or suspicion. Then, the Queen did something unexpected. She gestured toward Ethan. "You have seen our defenses," she said. "You have observed the responses of my people. This human, though young and untested by your standards, has demonstrated qualities that proved decisive in the recent conflict." Ethan felt every pair of eyes in the chamber on him. His heart raced, but he took a deep breath. "I speak as a human," he began, keeping his voice steady. "We are not perfect, and we do not claim to be, but humans see patterns differently. We adapt when others hesitate. We act when others wait. And sometimes, that can make all the difference." A murmur ran through the delegation. Some shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged glances. clearly unused to a human addressing them with such authority. Ethan continued, his confidence growing. When you underestimated our unpredictability, you learned a lesson the hard way. We do not claim to be stronger, but we think differently. That difference saved lives, not only human lives, but your own. And it can continue to do so if you are willing to listen and cooperate. Ethan could feel the weight of his words settling over the assembly. He glanced at the nurse, who nodded subtly, encouraging him to continue. You do not need to respect us because we are humans, he said. Respect must be earned, and in this instance, it has been. The choice now is whether you continue to see humans as insignificant, or whether you recognize that even the smallest spark of ingenuity can shape events on a scale far larger than expected.
The Varkesh leader's expression did not change immediately.
But Ethan noticed a flicker, a hesitation, a subtle pause in his rigid posture. The leader's advisors whispered among themselves, clearly conflicted. Finally, the leader spoke. Your words are unexpected, and your actions in battle undeniable. Perhaps humans have utility beyond what we anticipated. Ethan allowed himself a small, private smile. The first step toward recognition had been made. Over the next hours, discussions continued, with Ethan acting as a mediator and advisor. His human perspective proved invaluable. He suggested compromises that no alien diplomat had conceived, pointed out solutions that combined alien precision with human flexibility, and helped bridge the gap between two vastly different species. By the end of the day, agreements were reached. The Varkesh acknowledged the strength and ingenuity of the Erendor, 9 defenses, as well as the unique contributions of humans. They agreed to cease hostilities, to respect the sovereignty of the planet, and to consider humans as allies rather than insignificant observers. The Queen turned to Ethan once the delegation had departed. Her voice was calm, yet carried weight. You have done more than I imagined, human. You have changed the course of this interaction not with force, but with insight, courage, and the willingness to act differently. You are extraordinary. Ethan blinked, feeling a warmth of pride mixed with disbelief.
I just tried to help,
he said quietly. The nurse placed a hand on his shoulder. Helping is enough when it is done with clarity and courage. You have shown that humans can thrive even in places we once thought impossible. As the city recovered from the tensions, Ethan began to understand the magnitude of what had happened. He had arrived as a visitor, a human thrown into an alien court by a careless joke, yet he had earned respect, influence, and recognition. His humanity, his ability to improvise, adapt, and act with integrity had proven decisive. Over the following weeks, Ethan's role expanded. He advised on city planning, energy distribution, and diplomacy. He worked closely with the nurse, who continued to teach him subtle details of alien culture while learning from his human perspective. Together, they became a team, blending intuition with logic, emotion with precision. The Queen, once distant and enigmatic, began to show signs of genuine trust. She consulted Ethan on decisions that went beyond human understanding, asking for his input on matters of strategy, ethics, and even philosophy. The alien court, initially skeptical, gradually shifted. They saw that humans were not merely visitors. They were partners, capable of ideas and actions that could complement centuries of alien experience. One evening, as the twin moons rose high over the city, Ethan walked through the palace gardens with the nurse. The luminescent plants glowed softly, casting a serene light over the winding paths. He felt a sense of calm he had never known in his life, a sense of belonging that went beyond species or planet. You have done something remarkable, the nurse said, her voice gentle. You have shown that even in the most rigid systems, a human mind can change outcomes. You are proof of your species' value. Ethan smiled, looking up at the glowing towers.
I never thought a joke would get me this far, he said.
The nurse laughed softly. Sometimes a simple word can ripple farther than the grandest plan. You spoke and you acted, and that combination is rare. The queen appeared quietly beside them, her presence serene yet commanding. She gazed at Ethan with something that resembled approval, maybe even admiration. Humans are unpredictable, she said, but that unpredictability is a gift. You have reminded us that life is not only about logic, precision, or power. It is also about creativity, courage, and choice. You have made your mark, human, and the galaxy will remember it. Ethan felt a swell of pride and humility. He had come from a world far away, small and unassuming compared to the grandeur of the cosmos. Yet here he was, shaping events on a scale he had never imagined. Over the following months, the palace and the city thrived under the combined guidance of the Queen, her advisors, and Ethan's unique human perspective. Trade agreements flourished, defenses improved, and relations with neighboring systems grew stronger. The aliens began to appreciate the value of unpredictability, flexibility, and intuition, qualities humans possessed in abundance. Ethan's relationship with the nurse grew deeper, a bond built on mutual respect, trust, and shared experience. They worked together, laughed together, and sometimes just walked in silence, watching the alien city breathe and shimmer under the twin moons. And yet, despite his accomplishments, Ethan remained grounded. He knew that humans were just beginning to show their potential in the galaxy. He had proven that even a single human, underestimated and dismissed, could change outcomes, save lives, and earn respect in ways no one had expected. One evening, as the city sparkled beneath the moons, Ethan looked out over the horizon and reflected on his journey. From a careless joke to a place of influence and respect, he had traveled farther than he could have imagined. He had discovered that being human, messy, unpredictable, and flawed, was not a weakness. It was a strength that could shine even in the most alien of worlds. The nurse appeared beside him, smiling. "You have done well," she said simply. Ethan smiled back. "We've done well," he corrected. He had learned that even a human's greatest accomplishments were amplified when combined with trust, cooperation, and courage. As the twin moons cast their silver glow over the palace, Ethan realized something profound. Humans were underestimated everywhere in the universe, but perhaps that was exactly what made them powerful. In a galaxy full of rules, logic, and predictability, humans could act differently. They could improvise, adapt, and inspire, and that spark, the spark of humanity, could change the course of worlds. He turned to the nurse and laughed, softly. "I guess my yes baby wasn't so meaningless after all, huh?" She laughed too, a soft, musical sound. Not meaningless. Far from it, human. It was the beginning of everything. And as the city of Erindor 9 shimmered under the alien skies, Ethan felt a sense of purpose and belonging that reached across stars, species, and worlds. Humanity had made its mark. Not through conquest, not through brute strength, but through creativity, courage, and the simple, unpredictable power of being human. The galaxy had underestimated humans. They would not make that mistake again.